So why do we even bother to factorize? First, factorization makes complex expressions much easier to work with. It helps us solve equations that would otherwise look tricky. For example, x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. This is so complicated, but if you factorize it to open bracket x plus 2 close bracket multiplied by open bracket x plus 3 close bracket equal to 0, we can suddenly see that x must equal to minus 2 or 3. Minus 2 or minus 3. This is the power of factorization. This brings us to quadratic equation, the main focus of this topic. A quadratic equation is simply any equation where the highest power of x is 2. The general form is ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, where a, b, and c are just numbers and a cannot be 0. Remember that a cannot be 0 because if a equal to 0, we have simply bx plus c equal to 0, which is just a linear equation and is not quadratic. The x squared term is what makes it quadratic. When it comes to solving quadratic equation, there are 4 different methods to choose from. Think of them as 4 different tools that you can choose. First, we have factorization. This is the fastest method when it works. You can break the quadratic into 2 brackets and solve from there. Second is completing the square. This method always works and is useful if you need to find the vertex of a parabola or when factoring gets tricky. Third, the quadratic formula. This is the most reliable backup plan. It works for absolutely any quadratic equation, no matter how messy the numbers are. When all else fails, this formula has your back. And lastly, graphical methods. By drawing the graph of the curve, you can see where it crosses the x-axis, and the crossing points will be your solution. Now let's explore each and find out what's your favorite way. Now let's start with the first method, factorization. Factorization is about finding clues to break down a complex equation into simple pieces. It means rewriting a quadratic as a product of 2 simple expressions. Instead of having to deal with 1 computer equation, you get 2 easy ones. Now you might be wondering, when should you use this method? Well, if you can spot the factors easily, you should definitely try quadratic factorization first. Here's how it works. First, you make sure that your equation is in standard form, namely ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. Then you factor the left side into 2 brackets, where you have mx plus p in one bracket, and the other one you have nx plus q. And the product of this equal to 0. Now here's the magic. If 2 things multiply to give 0, then one of them must be 0. So we set each bucket equal to 0. So here we have mx plus p equal to 0 and nx plus q equal to 0. Solve this equation and you get 2 solutions. Note that when factorization works, it's often the most easy method. It's definitely worth trying first before you move on to other methods. Now look at this case where a equal to 1. In other words, the coefficient of x squared is just 1. This is the easiest case to start with, so let's start to understand how this works. Here's a strategy you need to understand. You are trying to find 2 numbers that multiply to c and sum up to b. That means when you multiply these 2 numbers together, they must equal to c, and at the same time when you add them, they must equal to b. C is the constant term at the end, and b is the coefficient of the x term in the middle. And once you find it, you can write the equation as x plus m multiplied by x plus n equal to 0. And from here, you can solve it, where x plus m equal to 0 and x plus n equal to 0. Let's work through a case where x squared plus 5x plus 6 equal to 0, step by step. We need 2 numbers that multiply by 6 and add to 5. Let's think about the factor of 6. We could have 1 and 6, or 2 and 3. Let's check. 1 times 6 equal to 6, but 1 plus 6 equal to 7. That's not 5, so that doesn't work. What about 2 and 3? 2 times 3 equal to 6, and 2 plus 3 equal to 5. Bingo, this works. So we can write our equation as x plus 2 multiplied by y, x plus 3 equal to 0. This is much easier to work than the original. At the end, because x plus 2 multiplied by x plus 3 equal to 0, we know that x should be equal to minus 2 or x equal to minus 3. When we have something that is more complicated, where coefficient of x squared isn't 1, we need another way. Here, we will come up with this tactic, which is called splitting the middle term. The steps are as follow. You multiply by a by c, and then you find two numbers that multiply by to a multiplied by c and sums up to b. And you split the middle term, bx, into these two terms. You group the terms into pair and factor each group. And lastly, you factor out the common binomial bracket. This sounds a bit complicated, but let's do it with an example where 2x squared plus 2x squared plus 7x plus 3 equal to 0. Let's do this step by step so you can see exactly how this works. In this case, you have a equal to 2 and c equal to 3. So a times c will give us 6. This is our target number. We need two numbers that multiply to 6. 6 is a plus c, and then they sum up to 7, which is our middle coefficient. We think about it. Factors of 6 are 1 and 6, or 2 and 3. We check the first one. 1 times 6 equal to 6, and 1 plus 6 equal to 7. Perfect. So here is the trick. We split our middle term, 7x, using our two numbers. So 7x becomes 1x plus 6x. Our equation becomes 2x squared plus 1x plus 6x plus 3 equal to 0. Now we group the terms in pair. 2x squared plus x, put it in the one bracket, and then plus another bracket, 6x plus 3 equal to 0. And we factor each group separately. From the first group, we can take out x, where we get x multiplied by, open bracket, 2x plus 1 and close bracket. And for the second group, we can take out 3 multiplied by 2x plus 1. So now we have x multiplied by 2x plus 1 plus 3 multiplied by 2x plus 1 give us 0. The cool part here is that both groups have the same bracket, 2x plus 1. Now we can factor this out to give us 2x plus 1 multiplied by x plus 3 to give us 0. Here we solve 2x plus 1 equal to 0, giving us x equal to negative half, and x plus 3 equal to 0, giving us x equal to minus 3. This method might seem long, but with practice, you can spot the patterns quickly. Here's a tip that will save you time and frustration when you have to decide whether to try factorization. Use the few factor pairs rule, meaning if the product A times C has only a few factor pairs, factorization is probably a good bet. But if you have many factor pairs, you might need to consider other methods that we will go through later. So why does this matter? Well, factorization involves trying different combinations until you find the right one. If there's only 2 or 3 possibilities, that's quick. But if there are 10 or 15 possibilities, you could spend a long time trying it out, and we all know you have limited time in the exam. So for this in action, let's see 2x squared plus 7x plus 3 equals 0. We have gone through this earlier, and we know that there are two factors pair. For 6, we have 1 with 6 and 2 and 3. That means there are just 2 pairs to try, and this is perfect for factorization. So this is a good reason why we should try factorization. Now, what happens if you have too many factors pairs? For example, we have this equation, 6x squared plus 29x plus 35 equal to 0. At the first glance, you might think maybe we should try factorization, but let's check the rule. We calculate a times c, that's means 6 times 35 to give us 210. Well, this is already a much bigger number than our previous example. And let's try to find the factor pairs of 210. We have 1 multiplied by 210, 2 multiplied by 105, 3 multiplied by 70, 5 multiplied by 42, 6 multiplied by 35, and so on and so forth. And it's so hard to even keep going. Imagine trying to test all of these pairs to see which one add up to 39. You have to split the middle term into so many ways. 39x could become 1x plus 210x, or 2x plus 105x, and so on and so forth. That's a lot of trial and error. So here's the tip. If you are checking more than 4 or 5 factors pair, just stop. Skip factorization and use the quadratic formula or completely the square method, which we will go through later. Think of it this way. Factorization is like trying to unlock a door by guessing a different combination. If there's only a few combinations to consider, it's worth trying. But if there are a dozen of possibilities, you are better off just using the quadratic formula or computing the square method.